Welcome into Sports of Steel's Saturday Slate. Justin Ferguson here with you. It's game week for the Missouri Tigers as they prepare to go on the road to face off with the Wyoming Cowboys. And joining me on the Sports of Steel phone line is my very first guest. He covers the Missouri Tigers for The Athletic, Peter Baugh. Peter, thanks for taking some time. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, thanks, man. So let's just jump right in it. Looking at this matchup, looking at the schedule, it's not very often that you see a Power Five school open up on the road against a Group of Five team. But what I thought made this really unique is the fact that War Memorial Stadium sits at an altitude of 7,215 feet. What is the coaching staff doing to get the team ready to play at that altitude?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's certainly been a topic of conversation in the lead up to this game. I think one of the things that they've talked about is just kind of they want the players to be conscious of it, but they don't want to make too big a deal of it because at the end of the game, like at the end of the day, they just want them to go play football. Pretty much one thing, some of the things that they've done, they've changed their diet a little bit to make it more. I guess their nutritionist Palmer Johnson is his name. He's done research ahead of the game about how to like best prepare your body for the altitude. So they kind of made some dietary adjustments. And then I think it's something that the players will be conscious of. But it also is more helpful. It's helpful that this is a sport like football instead of a sport like basketball where it's a little more endurance. Like football, there might be a little more, you might be breathing a little heavier, but it's not like basketball where it's nonstop moving. So one of the things that I know that they've also kind of talked about is that it's like, sure, this isn't like, this is one kind of condition that they're going to have to deal with, but also it's going to be 70 degrees out. So it's like, it's not going to be 110 degrees like it is on some stadiums fields on game day. So it's like, just because one element is a little different doesn't mean that they like that it should affect them more than a different one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
So yeah.
yeah, no,
I
it's
think they'll be fine with it in short, is pretty much what I'm saying. Like, I think it's, if Mizzou should not lose this game, they're the more talented team. If somehow they do, they should not blame it on the altitude. It's not going to be the altitude's fault.
right. Yeah, I mean, I've been out, in Colorado, been up in the mountains. Yeah, that first day is it's a little tricky to kind of get out there and run, but after being out there just in a day, you kind of get used to it just a little bit. But like you said, with basketball and the difference between basketball and football, you can always come out and get a little bit of a breather and get some oxygen, and you should be good to go. But the thing about Saturday night is it's also the much anticipated debut of quarterback Kelly Bryant. How much different, if any, will the Tigers' offense look this year compared to last year?
How much different with Kelly will they look?
Yeah, I mean, just with Kelly Bryant, the different skill set, he kind of brings. Just how different, do you think that
Yeah,
offense will look?
definitely. Yeah, I think so. I think you're going to see some similarities. I think Kelly Bryant came to Mizzou because he saw it as a place where he could prepare himself to potentially make it to the NFL. And Mizzou last year, he was impressed with the pro style offensive coordinator Derek Dooley. So I don't think, and I think that's going to be. I don't think Derek Dooley's changing his offense for Kelly Bryant. Dooley has said he's not changing the offense. I think what you'll see is tweaks, kind of to account for Kelly Bryant's rushing ability. So I think you're going to see a lot of like run pass option plays. Might be plays where he kind of can choose whether or not to pass it or to tuck it in and run with it a little. So I think it's just kind of, it's like, it adds a different element. I think he's less of like a gunslinger like Drew Lock was, just kind of being able to throw it downfield all the time. But it's I don't know. It's certainly a new element, and I think you're going to see like the offense as a whole is probably not going to look drastically different in terms of the plays they call. I think you just might see a little more freedom of Kelly running the ball more than Drew did.
Right, and I see a lot of people trying to compare Kelly and Drew, and I mean, they're two just different quarterbacks in the style that they play. And I mean, you may not feel the same way, but I kind of looked back at James Franklin's tape a lot and thought that the offense would look not similar as far as plays goes, but just the style that they would, with the running of, Kelly Bryant taking advantage of that, similar to how they kind of did with James Franklin. But then, was able to still move the ball through the air, just fine, and was, successful, doing that as well. Uh,
Yeah, I think in the college game especially, like running quarterbacks who can run are particularly effective. Obviously in the NFL it's a lot harder, but against college defenses, being able to do both can be really difficult to defend.
Right, and Peter, one thing I really noticed this week was that four true freshmen were listed on the updated depth chart that was published earlier. I think it came out yesterday. Which true freshmen should Tiger fans pay attention to on Saturday night and the remainder of the season?
I think Maurice Massey, wide receiver from Kirkwood High in the St. Louis area, he had a really impressive camp and just he's a tall guy. He's 6'3" with kind of a lanky frame that is just able to go up and get the ball. He's fast and he needs to work on his consistency a little bit. Sometimes he drops passes that he shouldn't drop, but like some of the catches he made were pretty astounding in practice. He had some one-handed grabs and where he just goes up and gets the ball. So like I think it's I think that's one thing to keep an eye on is like Kelly Bryant's kind of figuring out what receiving targets he trusts the most is like how he uses Massey, how much he seems to trust him. Because I think he'll get some good playing time. I think he's on the two deep, and honestly, in terms of like potential, he's probably Mizzou's like receiver that has the most potential of any of them. So I think he's a guy to watch for sure.
Yeah, and if people haven't seen, he made a heck of a one-handed catch. I know Missouri football, I think, put that video out on Facebook and on Twitter of the one-handed grab he made in the end zone. I mean, he just has a ton of athleticism. So, yeah, he's another guy. He was one of that I was looking forward to as well. Just after seeing that play, I was like, man, I really hope he gets some playing time this year. Switching up
Yeah,
to
I think he will. I think he will. I think he's a guy who's going to build some trust, and I think he's a guy who'll play.
Switching up to the defensive side of the ball, man, Missouri really struggled to pressure the quarterback last year. It has been a hot button topic really off season. Do you think this defense will apply more pressure on the quarterback this year? And if so, who do you think will come from?
Well, not to sound, I guess, rude to last year's defense, but I don't think they can apply less pressure because last year they really
uh,
struggled. I think especially from the defensive ends, I think Trey Williams led the defensive ends with 2.5 sacks. Um, I was really looking forward to seeing Trajan Jeffcoat play early this season, but he actually suffered an elbow injury early in camp and missed most of training camp, and he's not going to play in Wyoming. Odom said he'll be ready after that, or for the next game, but we'll see. So I don't know. I think you have a guy in Chris Turner who's been there 2 years. Now's maybe a point where he has a little more experience, maybe can take a bit of a step and maybe not be a dominant pass rusher, but at least get some pressure and some push. And I'm curious about Jatorian Hansford. He's a guy who he played as a true freshman, but didn't play a ton. And he's got a really good build for the position, for the defensive end position. So he's someone who I think could have an impact. He's listed as a starter right now. But I'm kind of interested in those guys who are maybe like freshmen, sophomores who you don't really know what you're going to get, but they might be able to do some damage. So that's like if Jeffcoat comes back, he's in that category. Hansford's in that category. And then I think we'll see how Trey Williams does after he's missed so much time because he was suspended. So I think like it's certainly a position that they're not particularly deep at, and also not a position where they have any established starters I mean, I guess Chris Turner's established in that he's played a lot, but no one that really is like established as like a game-changing starter. So I think it's certainly a question mark, and I would say the defensive end position is kind of like the biggest question mark. Up the middle, I think they're pretty solid. I think Jordan Elliott's going to have a good year. I think Akil Byers is a good player. Kobe Whiteside, the coaches talk highly about. So I think their defensive tackles are good. It's all about if they can get those edge rushers going.
Yeah, and I looked at a little bit of history going back to 2010 on the defensive ends, And you look at Shane Ray, Marcus Golden, a lot of those guys. They didn't have those breakout kind of seasons until really year 3 or year 4 in college. I think a lot of people, they look at Chris Turner and they're kind of down on him a little bit, but I mean, he's only entering his 3rd year in college. It's going to be interesting to see if Chris Turner can take that next step and really start getting some more production as far as sacks and seeing how that all plays out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it is like, yeah, you can kind of see how he does in year 3. It's Trey Williams' 4th year with the program. So I think you might know a little bit because he redshirted his freshman year. So I think maybe you know a little bit more of what you're getting from him. But I think with Chris Turner, there might be some potential that he could tap into.
All right, man. Finally, man. What do you know about this Wyoming team? And if you can give a prediction, what's your prediction for this game?
Yeah, I know their quarterback it's kind of an interesting quarterback situation. He played in 4 games last year and then actually ended up redshirting. He was a freshman, but he played pretty well in those 4 games. So I think he's a guy who kind of like Odom spoke highly of him and kind of called him like a pretty gritty, tough player. So I think he's someone who, like, I don't know, I think it would help if Mizzou's able to like win the line of scrimmage and get some pressure on him. I know last year they were 6-6, but actually were not invited to a bowl game because there were too many bowl eligible teams. So like that was certainly kind of a bummer for them.
Right.
They're a team that's like they're pretty. I don't think it's like I don't think this is like a pushover game for Mizzou. I think it's a game Mizzou definitely should win. But I think I don't know. We'll see how it goes for them. I think Mizzou will win fairly handily. I think it'll probably be. I guess I'll go 40-17 maybe. But I think it's maybe one of those games that like in the 3rd quarter it's still like a maybe not a close game, but not a blowout.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's kind of one of those games that just like Mizzou will pull away at the end, but it's not going to be like a right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think they're gonna. It was kind of like that last year. It was only 16-0 going into halftime, and I think it stayed that way almost for the most part until like almost the middle of the 3rd period or the 3rd quarter. So definitely, I think they're certainly not a pushover team. It's just it's about a matter of time in this game. Well, man, that's all I got for you. Thanks again for taking some time with me. And before I let you go, where can listeners follow you on social media?
Yeah, if you go to Twitter at Peter_Baugh, and then I also have a Facebook page that's just Peter Baugh that you can like, and I post all my articles to both of those spots, and then just following the athletics website.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Thanks again for taking some time with me, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for your service, and thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, man. Bye. That was Peter Baugh of The Athletic. He covers Mizzou for them. You can read his work, obviously by subscribing to theathletic.com. Also, if you're a Blues fan, Jeremy Rutherford, he writes for him as well. If you're a Cardinals fan, Bernie Miklasz writes for him, and so does Mark Saxon. So I've read a ton of Peter's articles. Absolutely love his work. He had an article out today that really went in depth on Kelly Bryant, and that's what I really like about the Athletic is those articles just go so much more in depth than your typical, the paper scribes and things of that nature. So if you're looking for articles that are just way more in depth, the Athletic is the place you need to go. And I'm sure they're probably running some special, if not right now, probably this weekend, so you can get it at a really good rate. All right, some news and notes for the game this Saturday. Junior running back Larry Roundtree is only 81 yards away from reaching 2,000 career rushing yards. Mizzou is 83, 40, and 5 all time in season openers. And we talked about it with Peter, but War Memorial sits at the highest elevation in college football at that 7,215 feet. So, like, when they get out there, they're going to notice it at first, but they'll get used to it, and it should be nothing for them. Again, Missouri is at Wyoming Saturday night. Kickoff is set for 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. You can find it on CBS Sportsnet. If you need to know exactly what channel it is for your TV subscriber, go to my Facebook page, STL Fan Zone. I posted it up there. You can also go to Twitter at Sports of Steel. I've posted it on Twitter as well, so you can go there and find it. All right, it's now time to transition over to the three games I'm keeping an eye on this week. And we'll start with game number one. I'm watching UCLA at Cincinnati. It's a Thursday night game. Kickoff set for 7 Eastern, 6 Central. You can find it on ESPN. Chip Kelly's entering his second season as Bruins head coach. They were 3-9 last season. And the good thing for the Bruins is that they returned 8 starters on offense, 9 on defense. So they got some guys coming back. So you would expect them to kind of maybe take a step, maybe improve on that record last year. Because it's a big year for Kelly's program. I mean, I don't feel like they need to contend for the Pac championship or anything like that, but they really need to show some improvement here in year two and have something that you can kind of sell to your fans, your boosters, and it's always nice having something you can sell to the recruits as well. This is a Cincinnati team, though. They went 11-2 last year, and they returned their starting quarterback and running back from last season. The Bearcats returned 8 total starters on offense and 8 on defense, so they got a lot of experience coming back to it. Like I said, a team that was 11-2. They're a pretty battle-tested team, so it's going to be interesting to see with the dynamic of this game because this could be a huge springboard game. I feel like for the Bearcats, if they win this game. They go on the road next week to Columbus, Ohio to take on the Buckeyes. And if they can win this game, that's going to give them a big boost of confidence going into next week to try to pull off an upset against the Buckeyes. I think this is going to be a great game, and it should be a great one to watch. Game number 2 that I'm going to keep an eye out on is Boise State versus Florida State. That game is Saturday night, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. It's going to be played at a neutral site in Jacksonville. Obviously, it's not really a neutral site. Tallahassee's just basically down the road. It's going to be at TII Bank Stadium, the home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. You can find it on TV. It's going to be on ESPN. Similar to Chip Kelly, Willie Taggart entering year 2 in Tallahassee. And last season, man, could not have gone much worse for the Seminoles as they went 5-7 overall, 3-5 in ACC play. And it's not like they were really competitive in their losses either. I mean, 5 of those 7 losses were by 21 points or more. Six out of the 7 were by 19 points or more. And a lot of their wins, I mean, came against Wake Forest, Samford. So it wasn't, Boston College. They weren't beating great teams last year either. And a lot of reason for that was their offensive line was decimated, with injuries. Their quarterbacks didn't have a whole lot of time. You saw Francois and Blackman just getting crushed back there and running for their lives. Very similar to the Florida game for Jaron Williams, the Miami quarterback, just didn't have a whole lot of time. So their offense, really struggled last year, and it played a big role in them not just being as good as what maybe they could have been in year one. The good news for Seminole fans is, it can't get much worse, right? I mean, 5-7. I mean, I guess win total wise it could, but I mean, they weren't competitive in a whole lot of games last year. So, I really feel like they can only go up from here. And like UCLA, though, this team doesn't need to win the ACC. They just need to be more competitive than they were in 2018. Get back to 7, 8 wins, go to a bowl, and show that this program is improving and that they are headed in the right direction. Boise State, they come into this game having to replace the Mountain West all-time passing leader, Brett Reichman. They also have to replace their starting running back and 2 of their top wide receivers from last season. That's just a lot of offense to try to replace for a group of 5 team. Let alone, that's a lot of offense for most teams. But then when you factor in a group of 5 teams as well, and they're just not quite getting those 5 and 4-star kids to replenish their program. But the thing about it is Brian Harsin always has his guys ready to go, and we've seen them beat Power 5 teams before. So I think this is going to be a good game to watch. Obviously, it's going to be on pretty much around the same time as the Missouri game, but it's one to definitely kind of just keep an eye on, just kind of see how Florida State does. Game three, I'm looking to watch this week. Number 11 Oregon versus number 16 Auburn. That is also a Saturday night game. Kickoff set for 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. You can find that on ABC. Game is being played at neutral site at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. And the Oregon Ducks this year, they returned 10 starters back to an offense that was ranked in the top 25 in a lot of categories last season. The offense is led by 6'6" senior quarterback Justin Herbert. And look, Herbert could have he could have been the first quarterback taken in this past draft, the past NFL draft. That's where a lot of people had him slated. But he came back. Last year he threw for 3,151 yards, 29 touchdowns. But he had a bit of a rocky game his last time out against Michigan State in that bowl game. They ended up winning that game 7-6. But I think he threw for about it was like 160 yards or something like that. One touchdown. Michigan State did a great job, really defensively in that game. And so I think, having that kind of lackluster performance really fueled Herbert to come back. Also, having all these returning starters, really, helps out when you're making that kind of decision. If you want to come back and try to, chase a national championship. That's what Oregon, I think, can do this year with their offense. And they had a pretty good defense last year, too. Gus Malzahn enters this season like every other season in Auburn, and that's sitting on the proverbial hot seat. And the Tigers, they returned 7 starters on offense and defense this year. They have to replace Jarrett Stidham. They made a decision on that. They decided to go with true freshman quarterback Bo Nix. Nix was the number one pro style quarterback coming out of high school, according to Rivals. And I was a little surprised to see them go with Nix over Gatewood, only because Gatewood is a year further along in Gus's system. So I figured he would probably get the nod. But I mean, if both guys are grading out, if they're grading out pretty much the same, I would go with the true freshman too. Uh, you know, it's only going to speed up his development. You saw how well Trevor Lawrence played last year. Not saying it's going to be the same thing, and he's going to go on and win the national title or anything like that. But in the meantime, you can speed up his development. And like I said, if they're grading out the same, why not do that? Why not go with him? This game is going to be a lot of fun. Oregon's high-powered offense against the Auburn defense. They had a heck of a game in their bowl win. And then Auburn played a very similar game last year when they opened up against the Washington Huskies. And the Auburn team got the job done that day. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can get it done in this game as well. All right, it's time for my upset picks of the week. Had a hard time picking something this week. I was kind of looking at the Vanderbilt Georgia game, but then I had a come into Jesus moment because I think the only way Vanderbilt wins that game is if they come out like their hair's on fire, and then also there's got to be like multiple injuries to that Georgia team. Fromm's got to go down, Swift, the whole team's basically got to get injured, I think, for Vanderbilt to win that game. So I couldn't go there. But my picks this week, I got Northwestern on the road over number 25 Stanford. Look, Stanford only returns 8 total starters from last year's team, 3 of them on offense, 5 of them on defense. And you know what? I'm a big fan of Pat Fitzgerald. He, for whatever reason, every year he has his team ready to play. They're a disciplined football team, and those kids play hard for their coach, and that's something I admire. So I've got again Northwestern. They're on the road. I've got them over number 25 Stanford. And look, hey, even though this team is favored to win this game, anytime an American conference, anytime from a group of 5, I'll say that beats a Power 5 and one from the SEC, I'm going to sit there and call it an upset, especially when it pertains to a team like Ole Miss. Ole Miss should not lose to an American team, almost ever. Now, there's history here. Memphis has beaten them before, and they're going to beat them again on Saturday. I've got Memphis at home beating Ole Miss. Memphis ranks 7th in returning production. Look for Brady White and that Tigers offense to light up that Rebel defense in a shootout at the Liberty Bowl. Again, I'm taking Memphis over Ole Miss. Well, folks, that's all I got for you this week. Thanks again to Peter Baugh of The Athletic. You can read all of his stuff there. So just all you got to do is go to theathletic.com, hit the subscribe button. I'm sure they're running some specials right now. If not, they certainly will be this weekend. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All you got to do in the search bar is type in Sports of Steel. Go to the filter button, filter it by the channels. You'll be able to find it. It's just Sports of Steel with a microphone over the top of it. That's the image. Because if you don't do that and you just type in Sports of Steel, it's going to give you a lot of videos of a guy that's reviewing steel sport watches. Now, I watched one of his videos. I just wanted to see what it was about. Very interesting. So if you want to check that out as well, you can. And then also follow me on Twitter. It's just at Sports of Steel. And then you can like the Facebook page. The Facebook page is a little bit different. It's STL Fan Zone. So go to Facebook, type in STL Fan Zone. You will find the Facebook page. Like the Facebook page. Gonna be giving away 2 more Cardinal tickets this weekend. So you're gonna want to like the Facebook page in order to get some details on how you can win those 2 tickets to an upcoming Cardinals game. I believe the game is going to be September 17th against the Washington Nationals. So go there and do that. Thanks for everybody for listening. And you know what? I'll talk to you guys all next week.